Welcome to the Random Horror Show. I am Keisha Lacey, your horror hostess, and the Random Horror Show presents spooky horror reads for amazing authors from David J. Harrison, Christine Germain, Lashane Arnett, and Eshawn Ruffins for bone-chilling excerpts from the authors themselves. And tonight, I'm going to present you with something we think that we always know what we can do all in our lives and how we mold and shape and be the captain of our lives. But for this couple, this unhappy couple, they get caught up in something beyond their imagination as two cosmic entities are playing with their lives in a interdimensional chess, as you can say. But how you feel about that? That everything that you've done, you thought on your own, but really it was all guided. I'm talking about David J. Harrison's Recursion, the cosmic horror thriller, dark mystery. So I want you to make sure that you take your antidepressant meds. You might have to check in to a mental hospital later on. But everything that is going to happen already has in Recursion.
Everything that is going to happen already has. My name is David Harrison, and this is an extract from my book, Recursion. She must have hit her head or passed out, and by the time she recovered herself, shaking the confusion from her slowly returning vision, the captain was bent over D.C. Matthews. Jane heard what was happening before she saw it. Wet sounds, like a dog thirstily lapping water from a bowl, came from the captain's mouth that had closed over the back of Matthew's neck. He noticed Jane's return to consciousness and lifted his face. Blood covered the lower part of it, from his ears to his neck, Matthew's blood. He grinned, and now she saw that his too many teeth were smaller than usual, crowded in multiple rows in his mouth, and they were pointed like the tips of a kitchen knife. Matthew's wound was bleeding profusely as the captain lowered his head to it once more. He flicked his tongue out and licked his lips and chin. His tongue distended further and further until it was a good 12 inches from his face. It searched for the hole in Matthew's neck, and when it found it, the tongue disappeared inside. For all Jane knew, it was growing larger inside her. Perhaps it snaked down the entire length of her. The captain's eyes bulged horribly as he drank up her insides. Jane recovered her feet. She hadn't forgotten the promise she had made to herself. She had to save herself. She had to run. She started to dash for the front door, hoping she could make it past the captain whilst he was distracted with Matthews. But when she took her first step in that direction, he shook his head, the tongue still far inside Matthew's body. The warning was clear, so Jane ran the other way back into the house, up to the stairs towards the bedroom. She must have tried a dozen windows, frantically clawing at the sash mechanism and at the brass locks holding them in place. Short of breaking the glass, there was no way to open them. She considered doing just that, but then there would be razor shards around the frame, and even if she could make it through without slicing an artery, she'd be on a steeply sloping roof and facing a cruel fall to the ground below. Running was one thing, but crippling herself was quite another. She'd only be doing the captain's work for him. And Matthews had made the call on her radio. Help was on its way, so instead of running, she tried hiding. Visions from her childhood swept through her mind, the ghosts of childhood games of hide and seek. She'd never played it with other children, but it was a game she knew very well. When the police came to her home, she would hide her father. When the social services came for her, she'd make herself small and find somewhere ingenious to wait them out. Somewhere they would never imagine a child to be. Now was the time for that again. But this house was unfamiliar. It wasn't her own, where she knew every nook and cranny, yet houses were houses. She'd make do somehow. She had to believe that she could hide, at least until the police arrived. The bedroom where she'd stayed was one possibility, but an obvious one. It had a large wardrobe, a four-poster bed, and a vast chest of drawers. She was drawn to those possibilities, but knew that the captain would be too. The first room she came to was the bathroom. An old iron roll-top bathtub might make her feel safer, but it would be no use obscuring her. She could crawl underneath its feet, perhaps. That was a distant possibility. "It tries to hide," the captain called from below, his voice thick and wet. "What fun," he giggled. "He'll count to 50. He began his count. Jane gave the bathroom a second glance. Her fear had made her overlook it. She discarded a perfectly good place to hide because her head wasn't thinking straight. The terror she felt was winning over. She tried to gather herself. She closed her eyes and tried to blot out the sound of the captain's mad chant below as he counted down to the game of hide and murder. She imagined she was back in the LSO, conducting Mozart or another complex piece with a lot of instruments. She'd have to separate one sound from another in her mind. She'd have to isolate and compartmentalize each instrument. And she applied this technique now to her situation. Rooms, furniture, hiding places. Where would her body fit? 46, 45, the captain giggled. "Is it having fun? It likes its games, doesn't it?" Then Jane knew what to do. To the captain, this was a game, and games had rules. One of those rules of hide and seek was to look away whilst counting. She hastily took off her boots and socks and tossed them under the bathtub. She put the metal plug in the hole and turned on the taps. Soon the upstairs was filled with the sounds of the bath running. Then, with bare feet, she held her breath and crept back along the landing to the top of the stairs. 32, 31, ha ha, it's having a bath, is it? Is it done? Is it hidden? Can he come? No, he mustn't. Rules are rules. He almost had to shout over the sound of the running water. Jane managed to peek at him from the top of the stairs and saw that he was indeed dutifully looking away with his hands over his eyes. She crept along the outside of the staircase rather than the middle, hoping that it wouldn't creak. The slight squeak and tread of her bare feet were obscured by the captain's rambunctious counting and laughing. At the bottom of the stairs she saw him at an angle. The dressing gown hung loosely on his square shoulders. Blood clung to his shoulders and arms. 19, 18. Jane put one foot on the ground floor and twisted her body. She felt a rise of panic as she put her back to him, but it was necessary. Once she was around the bottom finial of the thick oak balustrade, she would be out of sight. 15, 14. She found the door to a cupboard under the stairs. It was made of the same oak wainscoting that clad the entire downstairs, but it opened easily at the slight pull on its small wooden handle. She opened it a fraction, and though to her the slight squeak of the hinges sounded like a trumpet blast, when she spared a last glance at the captain, he didn't seem as if he had heard anything. He was shouting now. He was perhaps thinking that she'd made it into the furthest recesses of the house. She began to regret that she hadn't. The bathroom, the master bedroom, or even the attic. Part of her wished that she'd tried to put as much distance as possible between her and this monster. The space under the stairs seemed far too close. 9, 8, 7. With seconds to spare, she inserted herself into the space under the stairs and closed the door behind her as quietly as possible. Her fear raged against the shutting herself up in a hole with no escape if she were to be found. But then her reasoning told her that it was the right thing to do. She had felt this awful power when she'd cast her aside like she'd weighed nothing. There was surely little chance of fighting him off, even if she were out in the open. Her best chance lay in keeping still and keeping quiet. He is coming, ready or not. It was pitch black in the cupboard. It smelt like old coats and leather, damp soil and furniture polish. She didn't know what else was in here, so she dared not move a muscle. Even her breathing had to be shallow, lest she dislodge something and make a noise that would give her away. Her heart hammered inside her chest, and the blood rang in her ears. Both of these seemed so loud to her that she had to tell herself over and over again that he could not hear it. She had to keep still, hold her breath. Above her, light streamed through from the cracks in the staircase. She tried to change her focus to see if she could see anything above her, the ceiling perhaps, but it was a sliver of light that was all that filtered down to her hiding place. The captain was right outside her door now, she was sure of it. She thought she heard him snuffling and scratching at it like a dog, but then his voice rang out from the other side of the staircase. It hides in the dark somewhere. It is listening. It is waiting to be caught. It knows that it is already found, but it likes its games. Has it already seen the outcome? Is it cheating? It thinks about what will happen to it when it is caught. It knows it will get eaten like its friend. Jane's body shook at the thought. Her breathing threatened to hyperventilate. It wants to be eaten. It wants to be drank. It wants to be drunk. One foot on the first step. Jane heard it creak under the captain's weight. It wants to become like Judy. It will make a nice host. It is very welcoming. The captain's tone was light and his voice had a sing-song quality, as if he were in a playground or reciting a nursery rhyme to a child. It will come out to play soon or later. It hides, but it wants to come out, doesn't it? A second creak, then a third as the captain lightly treaded up the stairs. A shadow passed over the cracks in the stairs above her head. She had a sudden urge to leap out and run away, but she thought it through. Was he far enough up yet? Would she make the front door in time? Once outside, could she outrun him? Was the front door locked? Was there a back door? She decided to risk waiting a little longer, so she would have a better chance when she made her move, although she dreaded making it. When she closed her eyes, when she blinked, all she could see was that toothy grin and the impossible long tongue snaking down into the back of Matthew's neck. And his member had been exposed throughout. His foot-long genitalia had twitched and slapped against his inside thigh as he devoured the poor policewoman. It shouldn't worry. It has been chosen. It belongs here. It is anointed. It won't be eaten. Not today. It is just playing a game, not a matter of life and death. Jane steeled herself to move. The captain had reached the top step. She was about to bolt out of her hiding place when something stopped her. It was something the captain said. Anointed? Safe? What did all of that mean? That time in the White Room where she was sure she'd been attacked by something, perhaps even violated. What was he referring to? It remembers long ago when it was little, yesterday when it was small. It received a visitor. It was set on a path. Does it remember what else it received? Does it still have it? Has it kept it safe? The captain was now in the bathroom. He switched off the taps, and the sudden loss of that sound was shocking. She could clearly hear him, even though he had lowered his voice almost to an intimate whisper. It was set on a path, and it was drawn to the other. The two of them together. They were both here, and they will be here again. Was he talking about her and Haruki? Did he know her as a child? Jane found it unsettling beyond words to think that it was more than an accident that had drawn both she and Haruki here, to Barrathwaite. Had they both somehow been manipulated in ways they couldn't possibly understand? Jane listened to the captain's footsteps head further into the top of the house. She heard the squeak of complaint from the hinges on a far bedroom door. Now was definitely the time for her to make a move. It was now or never. She drew a deep breath and put her hand on the cupboard door, wincing as she pushed it open, dreading to come out. She also dreaded the click of the door as it opened. Any noise was anathema to her. Without the taps, everything was so quiet. She could hear the captain muttering to himself from far upstairs, and she decided that he hadn't heard. So she pushed the door open and stepped out of the cupboard under the stairs. There it is! Does it want to play? A flower of pain burst around her heart, caused by the shock, and the breath was knocked right out of her. The captain had been right outside the cupboard door all the time. Through his bloody face, a grin of mammoth proportions cut through the grime and gore. He licked his lips. She thought of where that tongue had been and screamed. Well, that's it for the moment. I hope you enjoyed that extract from my novel Recursion. And just remember that cosmic horror and existential terror can happen to anyone, anywhere. Goodbye.